Welcome to Solutions with Courtney Anderson. I'm Courtney Anderson. This is episode 244, episode 244 of this program. And this is a show today that's part of our series, our Communications Communique series. Our Communications Communique series is all about what it sounds like. Communications, the field of understanding how we convey information to other people, whether it is visually, whether it is using our vocals, or any other aspect of our body language, our posture, our gait, eye contact, all kinds of super wonderful tools we have at our disposal, how we communicate with the world. And so we understand that the majority of the information we communicate to other people is not the actual content of words that we write or that we say. But it's how the information is conveyed. It's the tone. It's the body language. And so this is very important information that we convey in this series in regards to the field of communications. And because it's all very important information, we just call it our communique. It's a very important information. And so our Communications Communique series is very important information about how we communicate, about how we share information with the world. How do people perceive us? Do they perceive us as someone that's strong and assertive? Do they perceive us as someone who's passive and weak? Do they perceive us as someone who's in charge or someone who's obedient? Do they perceive us as someone who's credible? Do they perceive us as someone who isn't? The really important things that people ask about in relation to our lives, getting interviewed for a job, having a positive job interview, being hired, being promoted, receiving negative evaluations, having strong and impressive sales, having poor sales, being admitted to a competitive program as a student or a professional. All of these things where people are making decisions about their assessment of us. Communications is of primary importance. And so we often talk about in this series, I'll say it doesn't even matter if you have the secret to the universe, right? You could have eternal long life and youth and perfect health and unlimited wealth, but nobody will know, right? Because your communication skills are poor. You can't tell it to anyone else. You can't share it with anybody else. Or even if you do, people dismiss you. You might have said it or told it or written it down and nobody listened. So what we're trying to do is maximize what we are not just trying, but what we are doing in this series is maximizing the return on our investment in our time. When you communicate something to somebody else, ideally you want it to be received. And if it's received and it's retained, if they remember that you communicated it, and if it's acted on, if it's persuasive, all of this is really helpful. And of course, again, these are the foundations of gaining admission to programs, to academic study issues, to being hired for a job, to landing the client, to being retained and promoted and having successful sales, and all of the things that you could possibly think about. If you're in the nonprofit world, it's fundraising, right? You obtain the grant and you had a wonderful event and people donated more money than you anticipated. And so all of this is related to communications. It's how the world interprets what you intend for them to know. Do they hear you? Do they listen to you? Do they look at you? Do they pay attention? Do they ignore you? Again, are they dismissive? So it's an important series, but it's a fun series. And our show today here in episode 204, that's part of our Communications Communique series, is one that I just love. So the title of our show today is Say Your Name, Say Your Name. Say your name, say your name. Yeah, when I was putting the show notes together for this, the idea is that we're actually talking about saying your name and how important that is and what that does for your goals and your communications. And there was a song, a huge hit pop R&B song out by the group Destiny's Child. And I actually looked it up as I was finalizing the show notes. It looks like it was from 1999 or 2000. So if you're a little younger and you don't remember, I'll put a link in the show notes. So on CourtneyAnderson.com, that's our main URL. Of course, within that we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, heading into the thousands of pages. So we've got the longer URL for this individual show site, or you can just go to CourtneyAnderson.com, put in the search box episode 244, boom, it's going to take you to this show site where we have our top 14 points of the show. I've recently taken to calling this a stone of solution, right? Stone, unit measurement, it's 14 pounds. So our stone of solution is sort of our 14 highlights of the show. And I'll put a link to this pop song. But when I was finalizing the show notes, and they had a song, "Say My Name," and that was even the chorus, right? And so when I was putting this together, I thought, wow, say your name, right? It's musical. So for those of you who remember that song, that it gets stuck in your head. That's why it was such a big hit, a big pop song by Destiny's Child, and of course, Beyonce Knowles has gone on to be just a global megastar as a adult performer. Wow. So, what is this about? Say your name, right? Well, one of the reasons that I thought that this show was a priority is because I've had a couple of interactions just in life with people who don't say their name. And you might think, well, who cares? So let's think about this. So most parts of the world, when you need to get stuff done, like let's say you need to talk to somebody about your utilities, or talk to somebody at your city about your water or your city permit or something, anything, just basic life stuff, right? Like anytime that you set up a place where you're going to live, you got to figure out the utilities. You got to have the ability to use a computer and turn the water tap on and have water come out so you can clean yourself and use the restroom. And most of the time you have to set up accounts, so that usually require you talking to somebody at some kind of company or the government, getting all that in your name and paying any deposit, and you got to get stuff done. That's just life. All of us have to do this. So often, I'll call somewhere, an office, right? And like government office, and you'll get somebody and they don't even tell you who they are. So, you call and it's like, hello, city water department. And you're thinking, oh, okay. Now maybe you're thinking, well, who cares? Why do I need to know their name? Because in many different, in most, especially private sector firms, most private sector firms have a protocol where in most parts of the world there's almost a standard training that people go through. And because of this, what you'll tend to get when you call most private sector organizations, you'll get a variation of, hello, thank you for calling Acme Incorporated. My name is Fred. How may I help you today? And like I said, that's standard. In most places that have people that answer the phone for them or that call to their customers have very standardized training. And I know because I've done quite a bit of this. And so they may have a whole bunch of people in one area that they'll call a call, that literally the organization calls a call center. That's what it sounds like. It's where calls come in and calls go out. And people will be trained. They'll be given a script so that when they pick up a call, they'll be told, this is what you're going to say, and this is the order you're going to say it, right? So, thank you for calling Acme Incorporated. My name is Fred, or my name is Fred Smith, or my name is Fred, and my ID number is so and so. And they'll say all this stuff, and it's not random. It's all, they're taught to do this, and they're monitored. And a lot of private sector entities, there'll even be a recording that comes on, before you talk to a human. It'll say something like, please be aware this call may be recorded, right? And they'll tell you why. It could be recorded for customer service or evaluation or whatever. And it's also just a smart business practice, because it allows you to then understand what goes well with clients and calls and what doesn't go well, and it gives you the record of the actual event. And it's also in case something, every once in a while there'll be a rare mistake, so these things are recorded. So what I'm saying is that you'll get more conformity of people using a name when they're trained to do so, when they're monitored and required to do so, and there's a negative consequence if they don't. Also, when I worked and I worked in customer service, in phone accounts. This is quite a while ago, but when I was like 19, 20 years old, uh, one of the jobs I held, because they would hire people without experience, and it was minimum wage. Minimum wage is the lowest amount of money you can pay somebody in a place without it being illegal. So in the U.S., they've got laws about the lowest amount of money you can pay somebody without it being illegal, and if it's less than that, then it's against the law. Okay. So I've worked some of these. I worked at a job where I answered and then I made calls for people about their credit cards, and they trained us. So I know a lot of this because, like I said, I do training and I do evaluation and I help create programs in this area. But I also did it. I did it as just a person who worked in one of these jobs, and I know how imperative it is that you stick to the script. Literally, it's written out. It's a script, and you have to you have to say what you're supposed to say, or else there'll be consequences. And that's for consistency, and there's reasons why. Also, when I worked in minimum wage jobs and retail, so I worked at a shopping mall and a big retail store, and part of the requirements, again, is mandatory. You had to wear a tag. It's like a little plastic tag, and it had your name on it, and you had to have this on. If you didn't have your name tag on, it was a very serious issue. Part of it is because without the name tag, there weren't uniforms at the mall, because if you didn't have the name tag on, it's possible no customer would even know you worked there. The name tag was how you showed them that you actually were an employee and not just sort of a customer or hanging out, right? So there's an important reason. And the other thing that was important when I worked at the mall is that in addition to wearing my name tag, I also had to use the customer's name. So when they had evaluations for us in retail, so where you're physically standing, the person's shopping, they're buying something at the store, and then you process their payment, you were required to use the customer's name. I believe it was required to use it at least twice. That, of course, you'd have to know what it is. And if people were paying by credit card or by check, then it would give you a chance to look at their credit card or check and see a name, right? And if that's their name, then you would look at their credit card and say, or debit card, and, oh, thank you, Joe Smith, right? Because it was on there, and then you could use their name. And there's a lot of business reasons behind the name and why it's so important. And part of it is there's fantastic science and data that helps you understand the power of the name. And when you go to the show page for episode 244, you just go to CourtneyAnderson.com. And then again, you can go to the long URL, which should be embedded on this podcast within the tags. And you can just go to CourtneyAnderson.com and then episode 244, and that'll take you there. So when you go there, you'll see a link to some research from the National Institutes of Health, which is an agency of the federal government in the U.S. And it's where what it sounds like. It's where those gifted in the sciences and health conduct research and share that. And so there's a research article that's entitled Brain Activation When Hearing One's Own and Others' Names. Okay, well, we don't have to be, elite world award-winning scientists to understand that. That sounds simple. Your brain has different activation when we hear our name versus other people's names. Okay, that sounds simple enough. And so I put the link there, and it basically says that some of the findings are that, yeah, your brain does react differently when you hear your own name. And so here's some of the information quoted from the study that I've got, again, linked to on the show page, on the episode 244 page. It says, the findings of this simple paradigm are consistent with the findings in the literature. There is unique brain activation specific to one's own name in relation to the names of others. In addition, the patterns of activation when hearing one's own name relative to hearing the names of others are similar to the patterns reported when individuals make judgments about themselves and their personal qualities. Oh, I love this. So the point is this: the power of you hearing your own name has been known for quite a while. And that's an example of sort of some of the science that's coming in to help us understand exactly what's happening when we get this heighten attention when you use somebody's name, which is one of the reasons why businesses train team members and staff members and educate them to use the customer's name, because it's really powerful. It gets people's attention. The catch is, of course, you need to know their name, right? And so if you have anything to do with ever working or intending to work or existing in society, then you know the power of names. Having science and having data to kind of help you begin to understand exactly what's happening. What they're doing is they've done experiments to be able to, and research to be able to show you what part of your brain, to begin to get the details. But the general big picture, we understand. You don't even need to have any background in this. When you hear your name, you hear it. Even when you're a young child and you're in a class with other kids, right? And they get to your name and the teacher calls your name, you perk up. It's my name. And there's a whole bunch of really fascinating research and findings about how people choose names, how societies and different groups of us as humans interpret different names. I mean, this is all really interesting. But the purpose of this show is to get to the point of you need to use your name. That's why I said the title is Say Your Name, right? Where I said the pop song that it made me think of was sort of giving an example of somebody who was involved romantically with somebody, but that person they were involved with romantically wasn't really using their name, which could have been that they were, hiding, right? Maybe they were speaking to them on the mobile phone, but they weren't using their name. So maybe somebody else who they could have been around wouldn't have even known who they were, right? Which they may like. Maybe they have, two romantic partners or more. So they're not saying your name because they don't want the other person to know that they're talking to you. That's my my look back at a big huge global pop R&B song from 1999 2000. But the idea is important because the idea was that, look, my name has power. And I don't need to be an adult, and I don't need to be anybody who studies business, and I don't really need to care necessarily about the field of communications to understand the power of you saying my name. And my point is, it's the same thing in our realm. You need to use your name. And it amazes me when I go, and I've had the opportunity to travel all over the world, which I love, because I get to learn and experience things and have adventures and really heighten and sharpen my skills as an educator and as a scholar and as a speaker and a corporate trainer. Yet I've been in rooms where people come into the room at work and they just start talking and they don't use their name. And sometimes I think the person may feel like everybody knows me in this room. And it may be that most people know you. But, it's amazing. Even at places that people work every day, like they go to that place every single day, the larger the organization is and the less individual contact somebody has with the person, and especially when you have somebody that's higher up the ladder in terms of the hierarchy, they may not even actually recognize who's they. You're in a room with people that you work with, right? And there are 200 people in the room, and here comes the chief executive officer or the president of the organization. And you might think, well, doesn't everybody know who that is? What I'm telling you is no, they don't. And if you ever worked a diversity of experiences, and I know when I worked in minimum wage jobs, as I said earlier, I worked at the mall and retail for a big department store, and I worked for a credit card company on the phone as a customer service person. I couldn't have physically seen somebody walk in the room and told you that was our chief executive of anything, because I'm too low on the totem pole. I don't have interaction with the top decision makers. So you know what? You need to say your name. There are going to be people in a room, unless it's really, 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 really small. Like if it's 3 people in the room and you all work together, then okay. But you need to get in the habit of you saying your name. And I'm saying that I've seen this with people at low-level jobs. Like I said earlier, you call the city because you need help, and the person answers the phone. They don't even tell you who they are. Thank you for calling the city water department. Okay. In my mind, I'm thinking, and you are? And here's where I want to explain why it matters. Because sometimes when we do training programs on this, or we do seminars on this, people say, well, who cares what the name is, right? Like, I'm just calling the city water department for my utilities. I don't care what that person's name is. Or you might say, well, why do I care what the person's name is, the customer service call center person? Like, I don't care. All I want to do is talk to them about my bill or talk to them about my, credit card or whatever. And here's what I'm trying to explain to you. You should care. Here's the deal. Why are you calling? Or if you've gone in person. Why are you in person at the office? Whether it's your city utilities or your credit card company. The reason you're there is because you need to get stuff done, right? You need to get your water account set up, or you need to talk about your bill. You need to get stuff done. If you didn't need to get stuff done, then you wouldn't be calling or going in person. You would just be doing something else with your life, right? And the person that you're talking to can either help you get that stuff done that you want. That's your goal, right? Or they can be a hindrance, right? If you know, and we've just very briefly addressed I'm going to make the argument, established and proven power of names, then why wouldn't you use it? You need to get stuff done. The person who's answering the phone or the person that's talking to you in that city office, they could help you, or they could hurt you, or they could just, be agnostic and really do nothing. But even if they're, quote, doing nothing, they're still there. They can still they're going to click on something on the computer. They're going to make a phone call. They're going to fill out a form. They're going to do something. And if there was something that you could do to make them more positively inclined for you individually, for your form, for your account, why wouldn't you do this? Now, I could make the other argument, and I will now, right now, that it's just it's a great way to make other people feel valuable. So my first line of argument is that it's really effective to say your name. It's effective. The other point, though, on a more philosophical and emotional level, is it's a very powerful, positive reinforcer for people to have an identity. And that's some of what the article that I just was talking about. They were talking about how people reference themselves and how we literally define ourselves, and why the name is such a powerful part of this. So when you use somebody's name, it means that you see them as a person. And when they use your name, it means that they see you as a person and not just this account or not just this form. And it also impacts how they treat you. So why would you not do this? You need to use your name. I don't care if you're the CEO of this, huge organization, some big nonprofit. You need to tell people who you are. Because unless it's, again, like the 2 or 3 people that you work with every day in your office, other people are going to be new to the organization. They're going to have transferred, and they may know your name, but they don't know your face. So just say your name. It is really frustrating when somebody's sitting somewhere or listening. They're taking part, right? And they really want to know what's going on. They're like, oh, okay, this is interesting. I'm taking part in this meeting. And yet they're denied an understanding of your name. And ideally, also, you should say your name, your human name individually, but also then explain your title. Like, what do you do at this place? Oh, I'm the Chief Executive Human Resources. Oh, okay. Well, that explains something. Or I'm the the information technology, director. Oh, okay. And what sometimes happens, and I've seen this, and again, I have this really unique vantage point because when I'm out doing consulting and I'm out doing corporate training, I'm just out flying around the world, all these different work locations. So I get to see things from that perspective. I've been in rooms where people start talking, and they'll say, hi everybody, and they're hi, and then they'll say, well, everybody knows who I am, and then they'll just keep talking. And I'm thinking, like, no, everybody doesn't. For one, I'm in the room and I don't necessarily. And there are other people in that room, I'm telling you, unless it's, again, like 2 or 3 people that are in your daily team that you interface with, if it starts to get any bigger than that, then you just want to say, again, because they may know your name and not your face, or your face and not your name. They may be new. They may be from a different department. Who knows? They may be a consultant. Just say it. If you are not the chief executive officer, or someone who has enough power, prestige, or purpose that you're the one given the floor at an important work meeting, let's say you're just the hourly worker, you're the one answering the call or sitting at the front desk at the city office, you may think, well, who cares what my name is? These people don't, I don't have some fancy title. I'm literally like the person at the desk or the person who answers the phone. I don't have a lot of power. I don't make a lot of money, relatively speaking. This is my job. So when I answer the phone, I just say city water department, because who cares that my name is, Susie Smith. My point is that you should care. We all care. Our name, no matter what your name is so powerful. And there's a lot of, again, to me, because I love all this type of information, there's a lot of really fascinating information about how we name ourselves. So some people have nicknames. So maybe their name that they were given when they were born was one name, but now they have a different nickname, and then they'll use that. They'll say to people, "Hey, I'm, so and so, but everybody calls me, my name is William, but everybody calls me Jim or whatever," and that their nickname means something because it's how you start to see yourself. So you need to say your name. Now, I'm from the perspective of business, of organizational leadership, strategic leadership, I'm telling you the reasons why you need to say your name. Because your customer wants to relate to someone at that big nameless entity, the city water department, or the big credit card company, or that big bank, or the big utility company, or whatever. They want to feel when you work somewhere and you say your name, then it also implies that the individual matters. So yes, you work at the city water department, but you are Fred Brown. Okay. Then you're a person, right? And when you start to show your customer, your client, your constituent that you're a person, then that also opens up this pathway for your customer, client, constituent to understand that they're a person who matters. Now, I get it. I spend a ton of time with clients and organizations on dealing with this, because the bigger your organization is, then the harder it is for people to feel that they individually matter. And you see that with big banks and big utilities. People say, look, I'm just one customer, right? And you I know how big you are. You probably don't really care about me. When people say that, though, they also secretly hope that you do care enough to at least help them with the bill, or help them set up this account, or answer their question, or get a tech person out to help repair, whatever's wrong. Like, if they truly, when people get to the point where they feel like they don't matter at all, then they're not even bothering to call the city water department, because they've no sense of hope, or they're not engaged in society. They've just given up. The sort of core essence of us as a human to feel that we matter is incredibly powerful. The utilization of a name makes us feel we matter. I'm arguing that we do matter, and that this isn't just some sort of process to make it appear like we matter. I'm arguing we do matter, and of course, and you understand that if everybody went away, then there would be no city water department, and that happens all the time. People leave that city, and you'll go places, and you'll read, and people say, hey, it used to be a really thriving city here. It used to be something, but people moved away for whatever reason. Maybe the economy, or the climate, or the local industry shut down, and it's a dying city. And cities, there's no people there. So yeah, you do matter. And by the person on the phone using their name, that humanizes them. I've worked jobs where, I'm not anything, I have no power. I'm literally the lowest pay you can pay without violating the law. I have a very, very defined job where I have no ability to change it or do anything different. I'm reading a script. I'm verbatim, just reading what I'm supposed to. It doesn't mean I'm not a person. It doesn't mean that I don't have dreams and hopes and plans. And it didn't mean that, the Courtney in that job was some subhuman version of Courtney, and if I have a different job now, then it means I'm a different person. Not at all. Having dignity and respect, I argue, is inherent in being a human. And the reason you need to say your name, is part of it, is to reclaim that. So I'm arguing this very deep fundamental reason why you need to say your name. The other thing I'm going to say, though, again, because we're strategists, right? There's a huge difference between, "Hi, thanks for calling the city water department. How may I help you?" and "Thanks for calling the city water department. This is Courtney Anderson. How may I help you today?" Now, the only thing I added was my name. You're going to get the difference for somebody who's trying to interact with your organization and hearing the generic city water department and this personalization of it. This is Courtney Anderson of the city water department. Hi, how can I help you? Is very different because now I've interjected this idea that we're talking human to human, right? And one of the things that I think is a very positive trend that you'll see. I said earlier that there's a lot of standardization in phone customer service jobs because there needs to be to a certain degree. You don't want people sort of like, "Hey, what's up? You calling the city?" No, like it's a professional thing. So like, let's not be, have food, in our mouth, and let's be using professional tone and all, so there needs to be some standardization. But the personalization is incredibly powerful, and you'll see a lot of organizations that even market that. There's some credit card and companies that market, "Hey, if you call us, you'll get a person. You don't necessarily have to go through pushing all the the buttons on the computer to wait in all the lines for the automated. You'll get to a human faster." That's an asset. People are marketing that. I've seen TV ads. There's also marketing pieces where people will show, "Hey, when you call our business, we want our reps to talk to you as long as it takes," because some places have parameters that people are incentivized to have shorter phone calls. Obviously, the shorter my phone call is, the more phone calls I can take. So there's something that you can see to that. The challenge, though, is if you go down this path of you're a human talking to another human, which begins to create the idea that this is something individual, which has a very powerful positive impact on your customer, right? Because your customer isn't talking to the robot, which is what it is when we have these automated systems, right? The automated system with the voice. Now, there's great research and all kinds of advances that are happening where ideally, from a cost perspective, in terms of just dollars and overhead, that they're developing technology where computer, the word robot I know is not accurate, but computer voices will mimic a human so much that people won't know the difference between talking to the computer and talking to an actual human. So that's one area that's continuing to fascinate me. But in the interim, while it's getting to a point where it's consistently believable, there is still a difference. So when I talk to the computer and it says to me, "Please share the reason for your call," you may say, "Problem with my bill. Open new account," right? Like I can tell that I'm talking to a computer or I'm interfacing with a computer. When I'm talking to a human, I can tell the difference, or at least I think I can. This is where I said the technology is awesome and who knows what the future holds. But the point of me believing I'm talking to a person is, especially when you have these companies and these organizations that they promote it as an asset, right? You want to come with us because here you're more than a number, and we don't put any call limits. We let our people talk to you however long it takes. Well, the benefit to that is, and I have to say, I did this with a financial institution not that long ago. I had an issue that I was needed information about, and I sat and talked to the person because they had a great phone voice, right? "Hi, my name is so and so with whatever financial institution." And then I was explaining, and I said to them things like, "I know these are probably, silly questions, but, these are my questions." And I talked to them, and then "Oh, no, that's a great question." And then they offered other information I wasn't, aware of. "Oh, well, I'm looking at your account, and were you aware of such and such?" And "Oh, wow, I didn't know about that." See, and I just sat there and chit-chatted and loved it, right? So what I'm saying is organizations that are marketing this are doing it because there's a reason. Because in terms of your customer retention, in terms of your customer satisfaction, it's always going to cost me more money to go out and get a new customer acquisition, than it is to retain an existing customer. And if I have a customer that feels that they're treated well, and then they're they're a brand ambassador for my business, and it's a win-win. So when you say your name, then that prompts other people to say their name. And when we're using names and we're perceiving ourselves as individuals, it's a very powerful, positive, that will help us both get what we want. The person who is at work wants to do their job and then be recognized for doing an exceptional job, helping the customer or the constituent or the client or the vendor. And if they get great feedback, that's a win-win for them, right? When I'm calling somewhere as a customer or constituent, I want to get the information I need and also feel like I matter. So when you're at work, just say your name, right? That's the title of the show. Say your name, say your name. Just say it. I get it. You feel like everybody knows you. Maybe they do, but it doesn't hurt. Just say it. And I don't care if you've been at that place 45 years and you're the chief executive, or you've been there 4 hours and it's your first day and you're the lowest level person on the entire organization in terms of pay and responsibility. It's irrelevant. Say your name. Say it. Say it. Anchor your identity in people's minds. And if you have, and some people, like I said, have their name, and then they have a nickname. Some people have a name, and then they have maybe not a nickname, but another name they go by. I don't care. However it is that you see yourself, whatever name it is you want people to use, say it. And say it where people can hear that sense of self and that pride you have in yourself. When I do the work, even these programs, and I say, I'm Courtney Anderson, some people may say, well, why is she doing that? Like, duh, I've listened to this show, her name's on there, she's the one talking, it's her. But look, for two reasons. One, not everybody is coming into the shows the same way. And secondly, to do the anchoring I just talked about. And it's the same reason when I worked, in decades ago in a low wage or the lowest wage job with my name tag, I still said my name. And I said it would probably, it's a memory that I'm doing this, probably pretty much the same way I say it now. Because being whoever you are, that name, it hasn't changed. Now the work has changed, but I still have value. Irrespective of any external judgment. I'm still a human and I still have that same intrinsic value. So yeah, my name, say it. I do say it. And it takes away all that issue where someone's like, who was she again? Or what was that about? Or just say it. And when it's a work situation, I say my title really quickly. So if I'm in court as a lawyer, and I do a lot of volunteer work now as a lawyer, but I still, I say my name, and then I say who's, I'm the lawyer for such and such, right? And often in court, you'll also give your licensing number if you're in front of a judge. But if we're not even on the record, meaning we're not doing something that formal, I'll still introduce myself and say my name and then what I do. Why am I there? Well, I'm the attorney for so and so. See, problem solved. And people sometimes laugh, Courtney, we know you. I still think it's a habit, but why not remind them? Because how many people do people talk to? A lot. Now, in your own, like when you're at your place where you live, then no, I don't walk in my house where I live and hi, it's me, the person who lives here. What? No. But I will say this though, as we move toward this show wrapping up, even with social calls, I'll still say my name. I don't do like a formal, hi, this is your friend from, 10th grade calling you. No, but I'll say it's Courtney, right? Because some people's voices sound similar. And even if it is a voice that you think, I know that, maybe that person's train of thought was somewhere else or whatever, just take a second to, reorient yourself. Because just say your name. And I've even had people tease me sometimes, socially. They'll say, Courtney, you don't have to say your name. I know it's you. And I'm like, yeah, I get that, but still, I just say it. Why not? It could be my number calling, right? But maybe somebody else has my number, because what if I've been injured, I'm in a coma, and someone else is calling on my phone, right? Like, who knows what could have happened? But definitely professionally, you got to say your name. Say it. And again, there's a lot of fantastic research into if you're uncomfortable with saying your name, if you feel like, oh, I don't really want to say my name, or I don't really, that that ties and relates to how you see yourself, like your self-reference and your sense of self. And those are some very, very fundamental and important issues. You should have pride in saying your name. And I don't care what your name is. Sometimes I'll meet people and they'll say, "Oh, I'm so and so," and then I'll say, "Oh, that's a nice name," or whatever. And then I don't like that name. It's my great grand uncle's name, and I never liked it. And I sort of think like if you're not a if I'm not talking about children, but if you're an adult and you don't like the name, then that's what nicknames and other names are for. Just use another name. In many parts of the world, you can, if you really, really don't like that name, you can go to court, and at least in the U.S. and again a lot of other countries too, you can go, and as long as it's not for some criminal reason, right? Like you're trying to run away from that other name because you have all these crimes. But if it's not for that, but it's just like that, you feel like that name doesn't fit you. You feel like that name isn't is not the right name for you, then just get another name that is, and then use that name. But again, the psychology about how your brain reacts, and I mentioned to you earlier that NIH, and I put the link on the show page. The psychology of how your brain reacts is not something for you it's not trivial, and it's not something for you to sort of ignore. And whether or not you care, you might think, I don't really care about the people's name, and I'm calling the city or my bill, or I'm trying to get something done. I don't really care. You do. Because like I said earlier, even if you're just purely looking at strategy, you're trying to get something done. And if somebody relates to you as an individual, then you're going to be more likely than not potentially to get something helpful instead of something that's a hindrance. And you should care as a human because everybody matters. And you want people that you interact with, whether it's at the store or some big fancy, professional, some, big organization, the big job title, they equally matter. And if you're like I am, in life's a journey. So, most of us have done all these different types of things where we've been the person that doesn't have any power and doesn't, have any prestige. And we've been in positions maybe later in life where we've had different types of jobs, but it's still us. And you understand how powerful it is that everybody's respected because you've been in that position. And who knows what the future holds? You may be in that position again. If I'm in the position again where I'm working in retail or minimum wage jobs, I'm gonna only be hopeful that I have that same sense of pride, because a lot of things can come and go in life, right? Natural disasters and all kind of horrible things that we don't have any control over. But your name, you should have a sense of, yes, that's my name. And again, if you didn't like whatever name that came along, or that name has bad memories, or and it's again assuming it's not any kind of nefarious situation to change your identity or whatever, which it wouldn't be if you're listening to our show, because that's not who we are in our community. Then go get a different name, so that when you say your name, I don't care what you're doing. I don't care if it's a social thing like, hey, it's me, Courtney, or it's a big work thing or whatever. Like that, you say that name and you feel like, yeah, that name fits me. I like that name, and have pride in that. And then get out there and do whatever it is you're doing, and do it to the best of your ability. You and yours and who you are is consistent, right? Now you may have changed your name because you didn't like the other name, or that name wasn't comfortable. Sometimes people change their names when they get married or go through different things in life, whatever. But that name, you and who you are is consistent. All these other things in life, what we do and what kind of work we're doing at this moment, that's all transitory. But you need to have that sense of pride and be proud to say your name. So all that was to say, if you feel uncomfortable saying your name, if you don't feel uncomfortable with who you are, that's a really important issue that you need to address, because it's going to derail and have so many negative things in life. You got to be your own number one fan, right? And so you should feel good. We know your brain is reacting when you say your name. Remember, we said the study of hearing one's own name, but remember, when you say your name, you're also hearing it, right? And it needs to be tied to a strong positive sense of self. Obviously, if you hear your name and you feel awful and you think bad things about yourself, well, then now we're going in the wrong direction. Well, then, we're not going to have, it's not healthy and it's not reasonable. It's not rational. And like I said, if there's something about that name that doesn't fit you, then just go get the name that does fit you. You decide. You decide. You decide the name. You decide who you are. And then get out there and all the things that we talk about in our programs, the sense of adventure, the life, the joy, the wonder of it all. And be part of the solution. Because remember, every time somebody else, you say your name, they say their name, and then you refer to them by their name. Yeah, yes. There's science behind it. Yes, there are reasons a lot of businesses and government agencies want you to do it. But forget all of that. The point I want you to remember is it matters. Because other people, especially people who are not having a good time and they're not feeling well and things are not going well in their life, they feel like they matter. You know what that does? You may be that little oasis in somebody's day today by just listening to them and acknowledging they exist. And yes, maybe it's something that you're thinking, okay, it was just some little minor account or utility, but you know what? You never know. And we've talked about this from the very beginning of this show and so many of the programs. And we talk about being of service, and we talk about other people and other people's happiness. Why not be that person in that little way that made it better? So being the person, you're listening to somebody else, you say your name, and they tell you what it is, and you say, oh, okay. Oh, I understand. Well, let's see if we can help you with that today and how we can make that happen. How's the weather out where you are today? Just start to show, like, I'm not going to be part of, like, another piece of pain or problem. And I hear you, and you exist, and I'm going to do what I can. And we're going to redirect their energy and their thoughts to somewhere a little bit more positive. And again, it may sound overwrought. It may sound like, unrealistic, but it's not. It really isn't. So my big argument here is, as I move to resolution of this episode, was the power of your name when you speak it and when you hear it. And again, that needs to be positive. And if it isn't, you need to adjust it where the name does fit who you are and it does conjure for you that positive sense of self. I have pride in my name, right? I don't care what it is. And the other thing is the power and the gift in other people when you recognize them as an individual, and using their name is the height of compliment in terms of you acknowledge they exist. So say your name. Say your name. And again, it's come from the positive place where you feel good. When you hear your name, it should be a good thing. Like, oh, I'm feeling good. I hear my name. Oh, I'm the one that said it, but I'm still feeling better. I'm hearing it. My brain activity, woo, it's lighting up. It's light, the regions of my brain, like they said it at NIH. Look at this. I heard my name. Yeah, you said it, but still, you heard it. And then be part of that conversation with other people. And then use their name. And I hope it's something that you think about, and it seems like it's a small thing, but it's a really big deal. And like I said, every one of the things that we would talk about, getting into a program, being admitted to something, interviewing for anything, promotions, feedback on how you relate to your peers or coworkers or clients or students or vendors, all of that. It relates back to this. So say your name, say your name. I really do appreciate you for joining me in the program. As always, I ask you to leave ratings or reviews wherever you find our program on our distribution partners like iTunes or iHeartRadio or Libsyn or Stitcher, anywhere in the world. I also ask you share with me your ideas and feedback for show topics or programs or resources. I'm very grateful that you took time out of your life to be part of the program today. I am on Twitter now at Zealous Business, and of course the main website is CourtneyAnderson.com. So get out there and use your name. Say it. Feel those good feelings when you hear your name and you say your name, and then give that gift to other people of acknowledgement. Thank you for being part of the program today.